Are you wondering which study design might be best to use for your next research project? There are many different methods to choose from, and picking the right one is not always easy. This is why in today's videos I'll break down everything you need to know about study design. To not waste any of your time, I've set myself the challenge of explaining study design in less than 10 minutes, during which I'll cover the two types of study design, the various subtypes that fall under the umbrella of interventional and observational studies, pros and cons of a selection of study subtypes, and ending with an overview of the evidence hierarchy. Now that we've set the scope for the video, buckle in, because we're going to do this very quickly. To make this more fun, I'm going to blend in a stopwatch so you can take a guess at how long it'll take me exactly. Okay, ready, set, go. As I've alluded to in the intro of this video, there are two major categories of study design. The first category includes interventional studies, which are studies such as randomized controlled trials or RCTs, crossover RCTs, non-randomized trials, or pre-post studies. In interventional studies, the researcher directly intervenes in the participants' lives by assigning them to a specific treatment or condition. For example, in a clinical trial, one group might get a new medication while another gets a placebo. The goal is to then see how the intervention, in this case the new medication, changes outcomes. The second category comprises observational studies, an umbrella term that is used to refer to study types such as ecological studies, proportionate mortality studies, case control or case crossover studies, cross-sectional studies, as well as retrospective and prospective cohort studies. In observational studies, the researcher doesn't intervene. They simply observe and record what happens. So for instance, a study might track people's lifestyle habits like a diet or exercise and their health outcomes over time. The key difference here is that in observational studies, participants live their life as usual without being assigned specific interventions by the researchers. Now that we know how to distinguish interventional from observational studies, let's take a closer look at the individual study subtypes, starting with interventional studies. Arguably the most famous type of interventional study is the RCT, which pharma companies leverage to gain approval and reimbursement for their drugs. A randomized control trial, or RCT, is our best attempt at a fair test to see if something really works. Think back to the example from earlier, where we want to know if a new medicine helps people feel better. In an RCT, people are randomly split into two groups. The one group gets the new medicine and the other group gets something like a placebo or standard treatment. The key is that the people don't know which group they're in, and sometimes even the doctors don't know either. We call this double blinding, which aims to minimize the risk of bias in the trial. This way, no one's opinions or actions can affect the results. By comparing the two groups at the end, researchers can figure out if the new medicine really works better than not taking it. RCTs can also be amended to allow crossover, which allows participants to switch between treatments. In such a crossover RCT, all participants receive the intervention, but the order in which they receive the intervention, also known as the treatment sequence, is randomized. So for example, if you have 3 interventions called A, B, and C, participants will be randomized to one of the 3 sequences, either ABC or ACB or BCA. While randomization is preferred in interventional studies, there are several instances where random assignment isn't really practical or ethical. For example, withholding a proven life-saving treatment to patients would be unethical and violate the principle of equipoise, which requires genuine uncertainty in the expert medical community over whether a treatment will be beneficial to allow random allocation of patients in a clinical trial. In these instances, researchers may opt for a non-randomized study design, accepting the higher risk of bias to bypass ethical and feasibility concerns associated with traditional RCTs. The last important type of interventional study is the pre-post study, also known as the before and after study. This is a study design that we're all intuitively very familiar with. as we're all applying it in our daily lives, basically without even knowing. If you're a student, for example, and you're not happy with the grades you're getting at uni, you may change your studying habits, for example, by trying out the Pomodoro technique, setting a timer for 25-minute intervals of intense studying, followed by a short break. After some time, you'll be able to tell how effective this intervention was by comparing your grades before using the Pomodoro technique against your grades after you've started using the approach. If you're critical of this conclusion, you'd be right, given that you don't know whether it was the intervention that changed your grades or something else. If, for example, you spent less overall time studying before using the technique and then started studying for longer after using the technique, your improvement in grades may as well be related to the time spent studying and not the technique itself. Moving on to observational studies, the first type we need to discuss is the cohort study. Cohort studies can be either retrospective or prospective, meaning that you either look into the past or start in the present and then look forward in time, following a cohort of patients over time. What I mean by that is that using a prospective cohort study design, you could start following a group of people today and track their exercise habits to see who develops heart disease. In contrast, you may take a retrospective cohort approach and look at past medical records of a group of people with heart disease to find out if they're smokers or not. As a little fun fact on the side, cohort studies got their name from units of the Roman military, whereby a legion was made up of 10 units called cohorts. In the 1900s, this term was then first used in an epidemiological context. Next up, we have case-control studies, in which people with a specific condition, our cases, are compared to those without it, our controls. In case-control studies, you look back in time to see if there's a difference in their past exposure or behaviors that could explain why one group has the condition and the other one doesn't. The University of Nottingham has a great example of such a case-control study on their website, in which an outbreak of an intestinal illness caused by a parasite in New Jersey was linked to the exposure of eating raspberries. I'll leave a link in the description in case you want to check it out. While case-control studies are great for investigating the causes of specific outbreaks like the one in New Jersey, cross-sectional studies focus on a different approach. Instead of looking into past exposures, cross-sectional studies capture a snapshot of a population at a single point in time, helping researchers identify patterns or trends, such as how common a condition is or who might be at a higher risk. Imagine for a second you're a researcher trying to evaluate how common asthma is among students living in London, trying to assess whether there's a link between asthma and air pollution. By looking at what's happening right now, you could survey 1,000 students from schools in London and ask each one of them if they have asthma or not, while also collecting data on the distance between their homes and major roads as a proxy for pollution exposure. Crucially, you wouldn't need to follow these students over time, as studying them all at once is enough to find patterns whereby you might discover that students living closer to busy roads are more likely to report having asthma. As such, you get a glance at what's happening right now, but this still doesn't prove that living near a busy road causes students to have asthma. Cross-sectional studies give us insights into current health patterns, but when researchers are interested in understanding causes of death within a population, they often turn to proportionate mortality studies. These studies focus on analyzing the distribution of different causes of death in a group to identify which conditions contribute most to mortality. It's a different approach, providing valuable information about health risks by looking at a bigger picture of mortality trends. Proportionate mortality studies are often carried out in very distinct populations, like in this example of golf course superintendents, to see if specific groups die more often from particular causes than expected. Okay, we're almost done now with the observational study designs, so let's tee up and discuss the last two designs. The second last study design I want to talk about is the ecological study design, which compares clusters of people often based around geographical locations. A case in point would be to compare prevalence of obesity in the United States and France, whereby the geographic area is the exposure and obesity the outcome of the ecological study. In stark difference to the broad population setting of ecological studies, case reports zoom in on the individual level. A case report is like a doctor telling a detailed story about a patient's medical condition and history. If this story describes more than just one patient, researchers call it a case series, in which they try to understand the common features among all of their patients, but it's usually still limited to a tiny sample size. All study designs come with pros and cons, some of which I've already hinted at when talking about the interventional and observational study subtypes. As there are too many aspects for me to cover, I'm going to cheat a little bit and blend in a table on screen that outlines the advantages and disadvantages of a selection of study designs. You can pause the video here and read through the bullet points, but for the sake of time, I'm going to move on now. Before I close the video, let me briefly cover the evidence hierarchy of study design. You might have heard that the RCT is considered the gold standard in research, but as you can see, systematic reviews and meta-analysis take the top spot on the evidence hierarchy pyramid. While I haven't covered SLRs today, I've made a separate video on the topic, giving you a full step-by-step guide on how to run your next systematic search. The reason systematic searches and meta-analysis are at the tip of the pyramid, as you can see here, is that they all gather relevant data from RCTs on only one research question, and thus minimizing bias and creating more precise results, enhanced generalizability, and improved statistical power because of overall larger sample sizes. An alternative approach to this traditional evidence hierarchy is a revised version, in which two important aspects are highlighted. First, the straight lines of the traditional pyramid are replaced by wavy lines, highlighting that study quality should not only be rated based on the type of study design, but also be based on the individual domains of the quality of the evidence, which can be assessed via the grade framework, for example. After all, the old saying, garbage in, garbage out, applies to SLRs and meta-analysis just as much as it does to any other field that uses computing to combine multiple input sources. Second, SLRs and meta-analysis are chopped off in the revised version of the pyramid to use them as a standalone lens through which other types of studies should be seen, reminding us that SLRs are only tools we use to consume the evidence. And that's it. That's the basic of study designs explained in hopefully less than 10 minutes. If you wrote down your guess from earlier, how did you do? Did you manage to guess the time correctly? If you want to see shorter videos like this one from me more often, let me know down in the comments. Now that you're done watching this video, check out one of my other videos, which you can see on screen right now, and I'll see you in the next one.